Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. You join us on the back of a thrilling roller coaster ride against Liverpool. Today we're going to be talking about De Zerbi's first game in charge of Brighton and Hove Albion and what a fantastic away performance we put in at Anfield. But as ever, before we get into that, let's see who we've got on the show today. We welcome back Toby. Toby, my friend, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing great. Thank you, mate. Fully here for the RDZ season. I'm absolutely ready for it, mate. Absolutely buzzing with the result, and yeah, doing well.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that, brother. We also welcome Dan. Dan, my friend, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Looking forward to getting down to talking about De Zerbi because looking very promising.
Let's face it, that's why we're all here today. We're all here to talk about Roberto De Zerbi and just what a wonderful human being he is. And we also welcome back Pete. Now, Pete, I think you've been on the show before. Is that right?
It was. I was on about 4 or 5 months ago after the second Palace game of the season last season. So actually longer ago than that, maybe 6 months ago.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. But are you keeping well, Pete?
I'm doing really well. Thank you very much for having me back. It's a really, really interesting time for the Albion. I'm really, really excited to talk about Don De Zerbi. I think he's going to be fantastic. I'm very when he was announced, I was really excited. I'll go into the sort of the because I've not really spoken to anyone really about sort of the selection process and who the alternatives were, and I think what we got was better than what was on offer necessarily. What the shortlist. So really, really pleased to have got someone of his caliber, and I'm very excited to talk about it.
Yep, it is a fantastic appointment, and so far it has looked very good. He's spoken very well to the media. I've been really impressed actually with how far his English seems to have come. He seems to be really keen to do his interviews in English where he can, and he's obviously used the interpreter as well when needed. Now, Pete, just before we get into our Liverpool analysis, I don't know if you were asked these questions when you came on before. What they are, Pete, they're just three questions about how we can build this idea of you as a Brighton and Hove Albion supporter. They're three pretty simple questions, I think.
Okay.
And the first one, Pete, is what was your first game watching Brighton and Hove Albion? Now that could be in the flesh, or first time you watched them play on the TV or something.
My first actual game was Brighton versus Mansfield. At I think it was the Withdean. I grew up and I lived in Kent, and we had Gillingham in Kent, and that's about your lot. Obviously, knowing the history of the Albion having to move up to Gillingham for a couple of years. When I moved down to Sussex, I sort of got invited out with my friends to go to the Albion, and I don't remember the score. I want to say Mansfield won and won fairly handsomely, but it was absolutely driving it down with rain. Before that, I'd only really been to. I mean, to be fair, I was in my mid-20s, and I'd sort of been to sort of Spurs games and England matches and stuff like that. And I'd never been to a lower league football game, and at the time we were League Two, and yeah, it was a culture shock. But I came back for more and more and more and more and more, and yeah, I was a season ticket holder at the Amex for about 4 or 5 years, and toying with the idea of going back to it. But I also work quite a lot in non-league football at the moment. I'm on the board of a non-league football club, and I'm sort of there for most Saturday fixtures. So I don't get there as often as I do, but as often as I like. But yeah, I try and get to as many games as I can. And Mansfield at home was one of my first games, I think. I want to say that was around 2001, 2002, maybe. God, that's going back a bit.
Spectacular, and I think that just sums up your first experience at the Withdean quite well. Driving it out, pouring it down with rain, losing. That sounds very familiar with many of my experiences.
It just felt very sad, but it was also quite exciting. And what I've loved about being a fan of the Albion and growing into the Albion, especially being an adult and not because most people start as a kid and sort of get into it, but I came really, really late to it. And but what's been great is seeing the development of the club over the years, and I started supporting the club under the Dick Knight era, and incidentally, your podcast last time with Dick Knight was fantastic. I watched the whole thing last night in preparation, but I'd known you did it a few days ago when it was announced on Twitter. I think what he did for the club laid the foundations fantastically well, but to have Tony Bloom in charge now, and for what we've got from where even I mean, I wasn't around for the bad days, but I've read Build a Bonfire. I've sort of done I know the history of the club really well, and to see where we've come from, just where I started becoming a fan, to where we are now, is just you couldn't write it. It's just wonderful, but I kind of miss it. Is that bad? I don't know if you guys feel the same.
No, not at all.
There's a
Me and Aaron always say that. We always say that there's a romanticism
yeah.
around playing that lower league football at the Withdean. And I think, and Toby, you've touched upon this before, as inevitably you go further up the table, and of course, inevitably in the Premier League, especially, the business side of things becomes so engulfed in what football becomes and is at the top level, that sort of there's that nice sort of, gone are the days when you could turn up on the gate, pay like a fiver to get in or whatever. Those days are gone. But I do totally sort of empathize with this idea of those were the good old days.
The fun was in the journey, not necessarily the destination. I think for me, I mean, the reason I got involved in non-league football is because I love the fact that you have such close quarters access to the players, and you can go and have a drink in front of the pitch. You are getting in for a five. You're watching some pretty tasty football matches, some pretty tasty fights on the pitch. You get to see a lot of. It's very raw, and it's like the good old days. But I do find going to sort of modern Premier League grounds. The Amex is a different place. It is different because it is home, but a lot of places you go, it just feels very sterile, and it feels more like you're going to a theme park, that you're going on some fairly mediocre rides. But but the Amex has a different atmosphere. For me, it does feel different, and it is still great, and I still have a passion for it. But I do miss the good days. The good old days of sort of going up through the leagues and sort of enjoying the ride.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm here with you there, Pete. I totally understand that. Second question then, Pete, is, so you've been supporting the Albion since we were at the Withdean. So in that period, who's been your favourite player? Not necessarily the best player you've ever seen, but your favourite player.
God, Spanish Dave. I mean, nothing will ever come close to that free kick against Palace at the Amex. That was just absolutely gorgeous. Gary Hart was big. I was a big fan. Adam Lalab, I thought he gave huge amounts of blood, sweat, and tears for the club. And I had a real bit of a man crush on Craig Noon as well. I always felt that he was playing at a level that he could have played at a higher level. Obviously, never did, and he sort of went backwards from us. But same as, but my all-time favourite is a recent one. I love the passion that Anthony Knockaert gave us, and I think I still miss him, and I think he still has a part. He could have a part to play at the club. His aggressiveness and arrogance was just something else, and yeah, I'm sad to see he's playing in Cyprus now. It's not really. It's either Cyprus or Greece, one of the two. But it's like a lower league club. It's not sort of Premier League standard or sort of top level standard. But yeah, Nocky. I like the flair players. Nocky, Craig Noon, that sort of thing.
Nocky deserved better. Yeah, he definitely deserved better. I think he could have gone on for us and done better things, but somehow it all sort of just stalled and went backwards for him.
It was difficult. I mean, we bought in Trossard, and Trossard at the time was quite young, quite raw, but I think he had the potential. And one of the things the club's done really well over the years, as we know, is recruit really well. And Dan Ashworth had a huge part to play in bringing the likes of Trossard to the club, and they got that right. And Trossard is an upgrade on Knockaert, whether I like it or not. He doesn't perhaps have the charisma that Knockout had, perhaps, but yeah, I do miss him. I miss his attitude, and I missed how much the genuine love and passion he had for the club. I mean, the club supported him when his father passed away, sadly, but and he's never ever forgotten that, and I think that he's always tried to repay that where he could.
Yeah, definitely. Knockout, fantastic shout. Wonderful human being, wonderful player.
Yeah.
And then the third and final one, Pete, is we were talking about this before we came on air, actually, shirts. I'm a big shirt collector. So I always like to ask fellow Brighton fans, what has been your favourite Brighton shirt?
Brilliant question. I've got a few of them. The first season at the Amex, the Brighton and Hove Jobs one. I also absolutely adore the maroon away skint one. However, the material it was made from, I'm quite a chunky chap, shall we say, and it doesn't lend itself to chunky boys. Sadly, it's a skin tight jobby. Have to say, I'm not a fan of the night kits at all. They're not comfortable. They're not. I miss Araya as a shirt manufacturer. I think they were fantastic. I've got some of the retro kits as well. And the most comfortable one I have is my '83 Cup Final shirt. It's so comfortable, but it's a remake. It's not an original. But not a fan of the new ones. I bucked the train because everybody adored the Hyper Turk last season. I'm 40 and it doesn't suit me. It just doesn't suit. So the last shirt I bought was the the gold one we had. I think it was the second season we were in the Premier League.
Yeah,
Gold away one.
the away shirt, was it?
Yeah, I think that was the last one I bought.
Gold. Yeah.
Yes, the one. Yes. But the night kits don't suit me. I really want us to go to Castore next season. I think that I really like the Castore shirts. I think the cut of them is fantastic, and they do some really interesting designs that are a bit different from the standard Adidas and Nike templates. So I'd love to see something unique for us because I think we deserve it as a club.
We certainly do, and it's about time we got a bit more bespoke kit. But no, I'm a big fan of Araya as well. So it's funny, isn't it? We had better shirts when we were in
when we're coming up,
than we do Premier League with Nike. So.
And much as I love the fact that we've got such a great sponsorship with Amex and there's a great link with the club, I do miss skin on the front of the shirts. I think it said something. It certainly spoke for us as a club at the time. And the link with Fatboy Slim, I think that would have been that. It's cooler. But American Express, we've got probably one of the best sponsors, most coveted sponsors in the league. The likes of Chelsea, Man United, clubs like that would kill for a shirt sponsor like American Express. But yeah, it's the corporateness and the sort of slightly, I don't know, the business side of things has taken over a little bit there. But I miss I miss the passion and the individualism. I think that's the one.
Yeah, definitely. And if, listener, you too miss the passion and the individualness, you can check the Albion Obsessed Dick Knight interview that came out just the other day. As Pete has already alluded to, we chatted to Sir Dick Knight the other night. What a wonderful human being he really is, and what a fantastic job he did at saving our club. So check that out if you haven't already. But let's dive in to our Liverpool analysis because there's a lot to talk about today. So Toby, come to you first, my friend. It feels like forever ago that Brighton and Hove Albion took to the pitch against Leicester, came away with a 5-2 win. Obviously, so much has happened. We've seen a new manager, a lot of bitterness and toxicity towards our old manager. But yesterday we had a chance to finally move on from that. And Roberto De Zerbi, took his first game in charge. Now, I just want to really quickly talk about his starting 11 because there was a few minor concerns that he might try and change too much too soon. What did you make of his starting 11? Only one change in that against the team that beat Leicester, which was Pervis Estupiñán coming in for the ill Enoch Mwepu.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with his lineup, and I think you got 11 out of 11 on your prediction, didn't you? Really, like, you don't want to rock the boat, and I certainly think that he's taking a really measured approach to his management, which I'm really glad about, because we are set up in a way that for the next month, our players probably know what they've got to do already. They've probably already heard it all from Potter. De Zerbi just has to come in, just say, right, this is how I'm going to be looking to start doing things. Let's try and implement it here and there, 30-minute periods in the game. I think we saw it in periods of this Liverpool game. Certain periods we were playing different formations. It was almost like it was a pre-season friendly against Liverpool, and we still made a mockery of them. Trossard still made them his pet. Yeah, no, it was really good to see. Really, really happy so far. And yeah, there's definitely improvements that I think can be made. I don't think that Brighton as a club are now finished because Potter's gone. Although I was admittedly one of the fans that were worried, but yeah, really, really, really pleased.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're perfectly within your right to be a bit sort of, oh, we've just lost our coach that has seen us finish in the highest position. So, of course, there was going to be those doubts, those questions about Roberto De Zerbi, what he could bring to the club. But Dan, I think it's fair to say within the first few minutes of the game, we saw a very scintillating Brighton who looked very up for it. There was a lot of possession deep in our own half. And you shared some of the videos of De Zerbi ball prior to his announcement. Do you think we're going to start seeing that a lot more? There were several times throughout the game where we'd hold on to the ball very deep, sort of invite the press, and then look to pass around it. What did you make of that tactic against such an attacking team like Liverpool?
I think really with how he's got his own style, which obviously he's basing it around what Potter already had, and basically putting his own stamp on it. And you saw a lot of one-touch passing a lot around, which under Potter would never see, because he was more hoping you keep possession and start passing around, waiting for the space. Where instead it was just sort of getting the players to move around. I think that's what he's trying to do, just has his own stamp on what Potter already sort of got into the players. And yeah, we'll probably see a bit more of that, maybe a slight formation change, because I think later on in the game you did sort of see there was a slight formation change, as I think we're going to talk about as well. And and yeah, I think we'll definitely see a lot more of that.
Yeah, I mean, that flexibility in tactical interchanging between shapes and numbers, we saw that a lot under Potter, and we certainly saw that under De Zerbi yesterday. We transitioned from a 3 to a 4 several times, I thought. But I think within that first 25 minutes, I think it's very fair to say that we could have been about 4-0 up. Because we were just that good going forward. So let's start talking about that first goal then, Pete, because it was an absolutely scintillating move from Brighton that saw what I think could be one of the best assists of the season with Danny Welbeck. Lovely little back heel to Trossard, who then puts it past Alisson. But fantastic build-up play. Some questionable defending, which we'll talk about in a little while from Liverpool. But Pete, what did you make of that first goal?
There's not much to add on to it, really. I saw on Twitter yesterday someone describing the way that we played, certainly for the first sort of 45 minutes, as espresso-fueled Potter ball, which I thought was a great term for it. And it's absolutely right. I think, as you say, the build-up to that first goal was fantastic. I had doubts when I saw the lineup at the beginning with Welbeck up front. I worry that against a defence like Liverpool that he could be a bit slow and a bit ponderous at times, because he's not quite got the speed that he had when in his younger days. I was really hoping that we'd throw Enciso into the lineup. The way I would have seen it was that, it's Liverpool. If we're completely honest, were we expecting such a result with such a performance? We weren't. So give the lad a go, see what he can do. And, there's no harm if he doesn't quite perform. And we can always bring Welbeck or whoever on Undav on at a later point, perhaps. But to start Welbeck, and he, like I say, that dirty little back heel was just absolutely perfect. And, it set Trossard up for a fantastic game. You could see from the celebration how pumped up he was. And yeah, I just unbelievable. A great start to a game to play against Liverpool and at Anfield like that, to go and score the opening goal in such a way. Yeah, really, really good.
It was quite scary in a way to see Brighton opening up Liverpool at Anfield with such ease. Now, a lot of the punditry afterwards and at the time, of course, will be about how poorly Liverpool played, especially in their press, which was practically non-existent at times. And that's, I think, a fair point to be made. But I also think you need to sort of give a nod to just how well Brighton played. Now, there was one defender, Toby, that plays for Liverpool that has been in the press a lot this week, and that's Trent Alexander-Arnold, not being picked for Gareth Southgate's England. And Klopp recently came out and said that he is a fantastic defender. Now, I'm pretty sure it was the first goal, his header. Yeah, the ball came in, Trent headed it away to pretty much a Brighton player, and then it came back in. Trossard then sat him down. Now, I know, Toby, you follow England football very passionately. What do you make of Trent Alexander-Arnold? I know we don't normally talk about opposition players too much, but I just thought this was quite an interesting talking point. What do you make of Trent's performances? Does he deserve to be in that England squad?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. As you know, I do follow England very passionately, and I am a firm believer of Southgate in. One of the things that I do agree that he gets wrong is team selection. And I like, it looks from the outside in, at least, you're missing players that are on form. James Maddison, etc., just not even getting in. You're playing Maguire, who was injured when Tomori's there. And there are a few questionable decisions. The problem is that I back Southgate, obviously, until his next tournament. Like, you're only as good as your last tournament, in my opinion. But I do have those grievances, and a bad tournament means he goes 100%. But at the moment, Southgate in. Going to Trent, however, I think that's one decision Gareth Southgate is spot on. I think Trent is the most overrated defender of our generation. I honestly, he's a good playmaker, but he's not good enough to be in midfield. He's a good ball player, but where do you play him? Because he's not good enough to be in midfield. He can't transition the ball well. The only thing he can do is play a good ball, pass a good ball, and that's just not enough in the Premier League. I think a lot of people suggesting he's a championship player that's just good at passing, and to be honest, it's hard to disagree. I mean, you see him against us, terrible. You saw him in that European game, standing still. About four of the Liverpool defenders just standing still as I can't remember which team they're playing, but they just literally run through the middle and score. And it's completely beyond me how that defence gets so much praise, how Van Dijk gets so much praise. He was at fault for some of the goals as well. But Trent, by far the most overrated player of our generation. And it's not even a question to me.
Yeah, you raised a good point actually there, Toby, and I know we'll talk about it later, but that's exactly what Liverpool did for our third goal. They just stood still, but bully for us, eh? But no, thank you for your insights there, mate, because I do think that Trent looked quite poor yesterday for them, but we don't want to talk about them too much because we want to talk about our fantastic performance, and I have already alluded to it. We could have been out of sight very quickly. And the next chance that we were going to talk about is Welbeck's free header in the box. Dan, that came from some fantastic work down the right by Solly March, who was allowed the freedom of that right wing for the opening 15, 20 minutes or so. And I think it's fair to say Welbeck should have buried that header. Do you agree? Do you think that could have and should have been 2-0? And what did you also make, of Solly March, who is consistently overlooked and underrated by some sections of our fan base?
Right, so the goal, the attempt, should I say? Maybe on a different day, it's still one of those things we do a really header in the box, sort of maybe against a worse goalkeeper, maybe would have went in. And at least was doing regular attempts into the box, freely as we were. It seemed like they weren't really putting much pressure on Solly to come in. And with Solly March, I literally said this. We all said it from the start. It's going to be his season this season for us again, because he just overlooked by everybody every time something happens. And it's sort of like going back to what I said before, when people say he's not scoring enough goals. He's a wing back. That's not his job. His job is to get the ball into the box. If he can score goals, then brilliant, score goals. But it's not really his main priority of a job. His job is to get the ball into the box for a striker or whoever's in the box to score it. And I was going to say I saw someone say on Twitter, I think it was Joe said on Twitter, I was going to say, like, he's playing under 6 managers now, and they all rate him. If 6 different managers rate him that highly to play him and to start him and to use him well, then why we who have or just watch it say that he can't play and can't start and not good enough? It baffles me.
Yeah, I mean, De Zerbi did point Solly March out as well. He pointed many players out, but he did say in a pre-match press conference that March was going to be very important to the way he wanted to play. And he was instrumental in the second goal as well, with a lovely first-time pass, Pete, for Trossard, who puts another clinical finish past Alisson. Now, I think Brighton, as I've already alluded to, they were opening up Liverpool at will. Did you ever think we'd ever hear that statement said about Brighton at Anfield?
Yeah, I did. I do. Because I think we've got a wide arsenal of players that can service good striking combinations. I think we play anyone on our day and beat them. I think there's no team in the Premier League that scares us at the moment on the form we're in. Possibly Man City. I think purely because they are head and shoulders above the rest. But certainly Liverpool aren't the team they were when they won the Premier League. I don't believe that they are that same team. I disagree about Solly March, though. If I'm honest, I see Solly March as being our Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I know you're going to all hate that. I look at Toby's face; I can see it now. Again, I don't know where he fits to be clinical and to be the player that he's got talent. He is an amazingly talented player. I am very, very impressed with him. But as a left wing back, he's all right. He's a great crosser of the ball, but we've got better options on the wing. He's good at a lot of things. He's a great utility player and absolutely deserves his place in the squad. And I'm not saying that he's a championship player like Toby farcically said about Trent Alexander-Arnold, but he absolutely merits his place in the squad. But I just don't think he's in my starting 11 week in, week out, because I think we have better options at each position, people who are more specialists perhaps. But if De Zerbi thinks he's going to be an integral part of his team, then absolutely, I'm here for it. I'm here to see what he can produce and see him kick on in the way that we thought he would when he first burst onto the scene 7 or 8 years ago. Because he is a talent, but he just hasn't quite pushed on the way I hoped he would. He sort of moved positions a few times and never quite settled.
I think that's really fair, Pete. To be fair, I think. I mean, Dan, you mentioned it as well. He's played under several different managers. I know that Oscar Garcia wanted him to play as a 10. He's been played as a wide midfielder. He's been played as a winger, as a wing back. Yesterday, I think he did a stint at left back. So I do agree. He's a very good utility player. It'd be interesting to see what De Zerbi does formation-wise going forward. And we will talk about him a bit later when the likes of Matoma come on and do what Matoma did yesterday. It does make you sort of think, well, which wingers are we going to start with? Because you can't drop Trossard. But we'll come on to that in a little bit. Now, Toby, I just wanted to talk about something really quickly. And that was for both the first 2 goals. Albion showed a real desire to win the ball back after losing possession. In fact, I think both of those goals came after we lost possession. And then we won the ball back. And then so there was some fantastic interplay. Do you think that's something that De Zerbi has sort of instilled in the players a bit more, or do you think that's a leftover thing from under Potter?
I think a large part of it comes down to De Zerbi, I think, because I read, I'm not sure if it was Italian media or English media talking about De Zerbi, but before he was linked with Brighton or anything like that. But I read that he's the sort of manager that, you know, if you score 3, we'll score 4. If you score 4, we'll score 5. And he's that sort of manager, which it's unusual because, you know, if Tony Bloom's been dealt a bad hand, we all know how good he is at poker, but he's doubled down on it. And he's it's almost like he's bluffed his way out, because normally he takes a cautious approach. And yet De Zerbi is out here being another attacking manager that, you know, he doesn't have the best defensive stats. And we've always been really good at our defense. And yeah, I think that just showed it, because the willingness to get your players back on that ball as soon as you press them, straight as you lose possession, you press them, you get on them, really caused a nightmare to Liverpool's day. I don't think they were prepared for it. I think, you know, with Graham Potter, the player that loses the ball normally does a bit of extra running to try and get back for it. But it was almost like they got swarmed and they were constantly boxed in. And I think, you know, if not for a lapse of concentration for a few of the Liverpool goals, I think we win that game heavily on another day. I think that just speaks, one, to Liverpool's quality. They still got it, and that's why they can still end up with 3 goals. But yeah, just really, really happy with the energy. You know, you think once Graham Potter's gone, do the players think the same of the fans and think, oh, that's the best one we've had in a long time, or the best one we've ever had? Can it get better? You know, can it get better? And you sort of question whether the players will have faith in the system. But they all seem to be playing 100% play for the manager yesterday. And yeah, I'm really, really proud to see that.
Can I just say that, you know, one of the things that I was very excited about in getting De Zerbi is that Brighton, we've become quite famous for moneyballing our way through a squad. And I was a bit concerned about the idea that we were going to moneyball a manager. We were looking at Kjetil Knutsen, I think, from the Norwegian or Danish leagues, one of the two, I can't remember. And when they were saying that he's a front runner for it, I was like, really? At the moment, we're 4th in the Premier League, which is arguably the biggest league in the world, and we're hiring a Danish first division manager. For me, I can understand why we would do it, but I really wanted us to go out and get someone with a proven track record. And, you know, Roberto De Zerbi absolutely ticks those boxes. He's managed Champions League teams. You know, he's managed in European football for a number of years now. He did a fantastic job at Shakhtar before the war in Ukraine started, and he wanted to stay as well. And that shows you his commitment as a human being as well as a manager. So I was really pleased that we got him as a manager, and his attacking credentials are fantastic, because it is something we have lacked as a club over the past few years. We've got, as I said earlier, we've got a great, huge service behind our front men, but we just need that finishing instinct. Our XG is astonishingly good. We need to translate that now, and I think De Zerbi's the man to do that.
Yeah, if anything, if yesterday's anything to go by, I think we're in for one hell of a ride in terms of going forward. But Dan, it was no surprise really that Liverpool would, you know, turn up eventually. It did take them half an hour or so, but they did eventually turn up, and they managed to score a goal before half time. There was some questions about whether Salah was offside, but upon VAR intervention, the goal was given. But it's like Toby's said already, it almost seems like the goal was avoidable from memory. I think Webster tried to play the ball out and it hit one of our players, and that's how Liverpool got the ball. What did you make of their goal? Did you think it was only a matter of time, or do you think we were a bit sloppy in possession and it was an avoidable goal to concede?
I think when we played Liverpool, I think we sort of expect them to sort of eventually wake up and to sort of play, because if they started getting into the game at that point. So yeah, it came really sort of not as a surprise, really. When I saw that they scored, I was just sort of like, I think it was going to come, and I was quite happy to go in at the half time with just the one goal as well, which is good for us as well, because obviously that doesn't change his team talk that a lot either, because really you just be like just try and defend a bit tighter, and it's always it's good as well because they were troubling us a lot of the time, even after the goal as well. And as we said at the start, it was sort of very end to end. Literally any sort of scoreline could have happened at any point, and luckily at that half time it was 2-1 to us.
Yeah, so moving on from that point then, Pete, I suppose in the first 45 minutes, we could have gone into halftime 4-0 up. We could have also probably gone into halftime, 3-0 down. What did you make of the first 45 minutes of De Zerbi ball? Were you excited?
It was, I mean, I have to be honest, I didn't watch the full game, I watched the highlights, but listening and looking around Twitter and sort of getting my own opinions on it, I think we did really well to go in how we did. It's never good to concede that close to half time, and I think it may have, if I'd been watching the game live, I think I would have gone in with a bit of a squeaky bum at half time. But I've always backed our defence. I think the guys that started like yesterday. I trust Lewis Dunk. In terms of Webster, I think I really rate him. I think he's a great player, but he's always got a mistake in him, and we'll come to that later. I'm absolutely sure, but I trust him. I trust our defence, and I think that we've got the ability to ride out a 2-1 scoreline. So I wasn't too concerned. I wouldn't have been too concerned at halftime.
Yeah, you make a good point. I mean, historically, defensively, we have been very sound, but Toby, we've conceded 7 goals in 3 games now. And one player who I thought Liverpool were targeting in that first half was Adam Webster, unfortunately. I didn't think he had a very good game, if I'm being brutally honest. I thought, I am going to put it out there now because I don't want people jumping on my back. The feint for our third goal where he dummied Salah was phenomenal. It was absolutely brilliant. But I did think there were times where he was caught ball watching and that Liverpool were really going after him. And I thought at times I was thinking we need a left-footed centre-back playing in that left centre-back role. So at what point, Toby, do you think Levi Colwill gets the nod? I don't think it's much of a secret that Webster's had not the best start to the season, shall we say.
The problem is Webster. He's almost got the Trent problem where he offers more to us in other areas of the pitch than defence. Because, as you say, he's someone that can transition it from defence to midfield. And then you've got someone that transition it like Caicedo from midfield to attack. And you wonder, with Colwill's lack of experience, can he do that same job, or is it just going to be a case of, I'm a good defender, but I'm going to clear it and they're going to get possession back? If Webster has to defend, let's say Webster defends 5 situations, and out of those 5, he transitions the ball out 4 times, and then one of them comes back at him. Colwill might defend a situation 5 times, but not be able to get it back, and then he's got 5 of them coming back at him. So it's almost like having to defend double the amount of attacks. That's obviously, I have no clue what Colwill's ability is on playing the ball out because we haven't seen it really yet. But that's the gamble that you've got to take. You've got to think. I honestly think that Webster's too good at transitioning us out to drop him yet. I think it would take a really mistake-prone, like probably a good 3 or 4 matches, a good period, before you can say, it's time for a rest, son. But Levi Colwill, I'm just not sure he's ready. Just really not sure he's ready.
That's fair. That's fair, mate. That's fair. As I say, and you talk about that transitioning. That's exactly what happened for our third goal, which we will talk about later. But as I say, I just thought Liverpool were targeting him quite a lot yesterday. And that happened almost immediately in the second half, which gave away a corner. We did manage to clear it. We went up the other end of the pitch, and then we gave the ball away. And Dan, Liverpool hit us on the counter. Could we have done better defensively with that second goal, Dan? Or does that start for you with the loose ball at the other end of the pitch?
I was for some reason I'm trying to remember which guy it was, because I think one of them was the dunk slide tackle. Was that the first one or the second one?
That was so the second goal. March is on the right up the pitch, gives the ball away, and then they hit us on the counter. Then Firmino, he steps inside Lewis Dunk. He sends Lewis Dunk the wrong way.
Yeah, we probably could have done a lot better with that. Defensively, I think when they sort of got up the pitch towards us, I think a lot of times the defenders sort of panicked. I think it's sort of time I say like I said one of the goals sort of went down a bit too early, and Firmino chopped over. I think that must have been the first goal. I think with obviously how De Zerbi, as we say, with how he is, obviously we can score as much as we want, but obviously we might have to concede a few to sort of that way, because I think they said in stat wise that when he was announced that Sassuolo he was always doing, games will always be to high scoring, both sides, and he'll be conceded. We could probably are going to concede a lot of the time, but yeah. It's just one of those things, sort of whereas let's say Webster also wasn't having the best game, so obviously Doug probably had to feel like he had to sort of carry it a bit more, try and put more on his shoulders, which obviously he wasn't able to.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I thought that it was a disappointing goal to concede. It was a well taken goal, to be fair, but getting hit on the counter like that, I thought we could have stopped the passage of play sooner, so it didn't happen. But of course, Liverpool are a very good attacking team, so we need to sort of acknowledge that. But one goal, Pete, that was incredibly preventable was the third goal, in which Big Bob Sanchez does his best Superman impression, misses the ball entirely, and it hits Webster and goes in the back of the net. Now, I do think I'm going to say this. I thought Big Bob did have, for the most part, a very good game. He made some good saves, but that, Pete, was a bit of a clanger, was it not?
Now, I have very controversial opinions on Big Bob Sanchez. I like him as a player. I've always been concerned he's got this in him. He's got a big mistake in each game, and you can always see it coming. And yeah, I don't know if he's reached his ceiling in terms of ability and in terms of being able to cut those errors out. Whether he's I'm loath to say a bang average Premier League goalkeeper, or whether he's got some distance to go still. I mean, he's only 18 months into being a top level number one first choice goalkeeper. He's still learning, but yeah, those mistakes, the mistakes he certainly this mistake he made yesterday, absolutely preventable. I think Webster has a bit of culpability in that as well. I think they could have been communicating a lot better. But I don't know. I need to see him lose the errors a little bit more, because he's always got them in him.
Your point regarding Webster, I think is a good shout as well, because yes, Big Bob did come to claim the ball, but Webster seemed to almost sort of, I don't know, just assume that he would get it. And I was always under the impression that as a defender, you need to be a pessimist. You always need to be under the assumption that ball could still be ricocheting about the box, and he wasn't on his feet, and it just hit him and went in. And I just thought, if he was a bit more alert, that could have been stopped.
It was a lack of communication, full stop, from both sides of it. And I think they, they'll learn from it. They'll go away and they'll watch that bit of video over and over again, and I'm sure they'll hate doing that, but they will learn from it. But it's my concerns with Sanchez is that he has that mistake in him. We've seen it on a number of occasions. I remember a game against Leicester. If it wasn't last season, it was the season before, and we'd taken the lead, and we conceded two really crummy goals, and he's done that consistently through sort of the period of time we've been doing this. He's been first choice, and I just want to see the the avoidable errors taught out of him a little bit, because he does make those just unforced errors.
Yeah,
I think he's only young still, though. I think he's
Yeah,
only
yeah.
24, 25. Yeah, 24 then. And a goalkeeper, I mean, realistic, I know it's sort of going by like FIFA standards and Football Manager standards of like numbers, but realistically, goalkeepers don't hit their prime till like 30 anyway.
No, mate, you know as well as I do, in FIFA and Football Manager, if they're over the age of 25, they're pensioners, so you get rid of them.
Well, no, goalkeepers are always different. Do you know what I mean? They, like,
yeah, I mean, look at Stockdale. Stockdale became the best keeper he ever was when he was 27, 28. So, but you are right, Toby. Keepers take longer to mature.
Yeah.
And I think you look at Dean Henderson this season, you know, he saved a couple of pens here and there, had good performances. But then, you know, one game he can drop a howler. Yeah. But you can still see the potential in him, and I still see that about Sanchez 100%.
I agree, and you know he's the Spanish third choice, and the two players he's got in front of him are literally elite, world class goalkeepers. So, you know he's doing incredibly well for given his age and his development. You got to remember 3 years ago he was playing for Rochdale and Forest Green Rovers on loan. You know the step up he's had to make, and the fact he's now doing it for a at the moment top 6 Premier League side is, you know, it is phenomenal, and long may that continue. But I just think his communication with the defence and certainly his ability to make an error needs to be worked on. I think, but you know, it's going to be a huge loss losing. Oh crap, what was his name? Ben
Roberts.
Ben Roberts. That's it. That's a huge loss to us. I'd be interested to see what the makeup of De Zerbi's side is going to be in terms of goalkeeping coaches. But I'm sure that a changing coach might help with that. But Ben Roberts was certainly fantastic for the club, and he's going to be a big miss in Robert Sanchez's corner. So we'll just have to see what happens with him. But he's still good enough. But I just think he needs to just make that step up for us to be really confident about him going forwards.
I think that's really fair, Pete. And I don't want to prolong the point too much, but I will just quickly say this. I went on a podcast, a Bournemouth podcast on Tuesday, and I was asked about De Zerbi, and we talked about De Zerbi ball and what that looks like playing out from the back. And one of the questions I was asked was, do you think your defenders are up for that sort of football? And I said, I have no issue with any of our defenders whatsoever. I think Veltman, Duncan, Webster can play that football. It's Sanchez that worries me. And I thought there was a moment yesterday in the Liverpool game where he was just too casual, held onto the ball for too long, invited the press, and then had nowhere to go. So that is one thing that I do think that under De Zerbi's football, he's going to have to really work on, because being too casual is going to lead to problems. But we're 3-2 down. I mean, I was disappointed. I was really disappointed. I wasn't necessarily surprised that Liverpool had come back into it, but I was really disappointed that we hadn't been able to hold on to a 2-0 lead. Now, there were opportunities, and I have to say that I thought, you know, we talk about goalkeepers. I thought Alisson was the difference for Liverpool yesterday, because we've already talked about in the first half how he made some, you know, smart stops. He stopped Danny Welbeck header. He came out and, you know, got the ball out of Trossard's feet, which was fantastic. And in the second half as well, we know Purvis Estupiñán, who, by the way, I thought had a really good game yesterday, put in a fantastic cross for Welbeck, who had another header brilliantly saved by Alisson. Toby, did you ever think that the turnaround was going to happen? Was it a matter of time? Were we going to make one of our chances finally count?
I can't remember exactly when Mitoma came on, but up until that point, I was very much a pessimist. Very much, glass half empty, and I was like, oh, I was actually watching it with a mate, and we'd had a few beers, and I said, oh, this is just, you play against the top 6 side, and even if you're 3-0 up, you just cannot be safe at any point. Even if you're 4-0 up, you know, they're gonna keep fighting, and they've got the quality to do it. And I said, you know, once the comeback was complete, I was like, it's done, mate. You can't celebrate anything in the Premier League nowadays. Matoma came on and almost sort of tipped my glass up to half full, and he all of a sudden this bright spark, and I'm thinking, hang on, we've got a really good chance at scoring here. It's going really well, and you know, I'm seeing the ball like pinging it about, and Matoma, they're getting it to Matoma, and he's running it down the line. He's getting past Trent. He's constantly causing havoc in that Liverpool defence, and yeah, he's the bright spark, and I really want to see him start a game at some point.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we talked about it. We talked about it earlier. You know, at what point does Matoma start ahead of probably Solly March? Because you can't drop Trossard at the moment because his goal scoring, his goal scoring form has been phenomenal. Solly has played really well, I do think that, but Matoma yesterday, he was certainly the difference. He was someone who, when he came onto the pitch, he made us look like scoring, and that we did, Daniel. We did score a third goal. But so let's talk about the build-up, because I was quite harsh on Webster earlier, but I thought the build-up play was excellent. You know, we were pinging around at the back, inviting pressure. Webster with a really nice little feint to dummy Salah. He plays the ball into midfield. It's played out to Matoma, that man again, Matoma. Then March flies down the left. He cuts it back into the box. Welbeck misses it, and I think, oh, the chance is gone. But Trossard hits the ball into the ground. Alisson can't keep it out, and Trossard scores our first Premier League hat-trick, and the first hat-trick by an opposing player at Anfield since Andrea Sharvin in 2009. So
it's a great stat.
I love me a stat, I do.
That's a great one.
So, Dan, what did you make of the interplay in the build-up for the goal and the goal itself?
The whole play right up to the goal was amazing. It was just so beautiful to watch. It was just brilliant. It was awesome. Just like you would see as well with Van Dijk trying to defend it and literally go straight under his leg. It was just like amazing. Because I saw they'll on Match of the Day saying, oh look, it's gone straight through his leg. What has he done that? And it's just like, what else can he do? He's gonna try and defend it. He misses it. So what? And obviously then Trossard, he's got to be. I did see another stat that he's now, is it 4 away from beating Glenn Murray now? Obviously, whereas Neil was only 1 away. Now we've got a player who's obviously now 4 away. I think it's getting to that point now where hopefully now we can stop saying that Trossard goes missing in the lesser games. Hopefully, you know, we'll have to see when we next play. I think that's what we say, Forest and Brentford in a couple of weeks. We're going both back to back. Hopefully that he shows the same performances again and shows that hopefully by then he'll be our biggest top scorer in the Premier League, which we all wanted Neil Maupay to do, and obviously now it's going to be Leandro Trossard instead. Which, to be honest with you, I couldn't think of a better player.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal little player, and it makes me sort of, you know, that gif of Homer Simpson going back into the hedge. It makes me sort of think of that, because last season I was like, oh yeah, Solly March is better, and now I'm like, oh dear. I still rate Solly, but Trossard's form so far this season has just been absolutely phenomenal.
I mean, if I may interrupt, sorry. We were talking about, you know, who do you drop to get Matoma in, and it's an argument between Trossard and between March. What if, because I don't think Welbeck's had a great last couple of games, what if Welbeck gets dropped, Trossard to striker, and Matoma? Is that not the most lethal, dirty front three you've ever heard?
Maybe not with the Matoma, but that's what we played against Fulham, and we were rubbish. So I think we just need a target man. I think we can say, you know, Danny Welbeck, he should have scored yesterday twice. If it hadn't been for Alisson, he would have done. But I think what we lacked at Fulham was that focal point, and I don't like Trossard in the false nine. I think he plays better out wide. I think the only other person you could try and drop for Mitoma would be if you played a back three, and instead of playing Estupinian as a left wing back, you could play Mitoma. But I thought Purvis had a really good game yesterday, and I think it'd be a real shame if he were dropped. But again, it's that headache of who do you pick for a starting 11 when you've got forward players that are all so good. I mean, we're talking about dropping Solly. Man got 2 assists yesterday. So it's really tough choice, and I'm glad I'm not Roberto De Zerbi.
I think it's difficult because you've got Stupinan he's still developing in terms of bringing his character and his game to the club. It took Cucurella a few games to sort of get solid and comfortable with the setup, and I think he's going to be every bit as good as Cucurella. I think we're going to have trouble keeping him. We've obviously got some big contracts that need signing over the coming months to keep us from losing players at the end of next season. Trossard being one of them, and we much as every player's got his price, and we've done some filthy work in the transfer market this summer. We can't lose Trossard. Not in the form he's in. Not the way he's playing. We moved on Basuma, we moved on Cucurella, and there were 2 outstanding players last season. But Trossard is the difference between 3 points and no points for me. We need to sign him to a better contract, otherwise he will go elsewhere. And that's the stark reality of it. I also think that instead of Welbeck, we've got Undav as well, and I want to see. We've got Mitoma, Undav, and Cisco, 3 big players we've spent a lot of money on in the over the past 18 months with Mitoma and Undav, but we haven't seen enough of them yet to really know where they sit in the squad. And I want to see, certainly with the games against Forest, against Brentford, and against newly sacked managers as Wolves at the beginning of November, I want to see those players come through the squad into those sort of games to see what they can do.
Yeah, and that's a good shout, Pete. Yes, while we've been chatting, Bruno Lage from Wolves has been sacked, so that will be interesting. I will get some insight on that tomorrow when I go to work, because there are some Wolves fans there, being as I live in the West Midlands.
Looking at the timescales, we play them on the 5th of November. It's very conceivable that whoever the new manager is, it may be their first game, certainly maybe their first home game. That could be a trickier game than we perhaps would have wanted it to have been had Bruno Lage stayed. I think we've got a great run of games now. I think we beat Spurs. I genuinely believe we beat Spurs. I can see Toby's face, and I think we beat Spurs. I think we're their bogey team. We've beaten them. We've beaten them before, home and away. I think we beat them. And then Brentford, Forest. I'd like to think we get 6 points from that as well. Man City, you go to that and do what you can. But then we've got a spicy couple of games at the end of October, beginning of November with Chelsea and Wolves. And it's interesting to see what manager Wolves come up with. You can bet they're going to be Portuguese, without question. It'll be interesting to see who they bring in. That's not the worst shout, Also, what's his name? Carlos Queiroz.
Mate, I don't live too far away from Wolverhampton. Ain't no way Mourinho's leaving Rome to come and
Can you imagine?
Trust me.
But then I would have said that there's no way Goncalo Guedes was going to move from Valencia to Wolves. So you don't know. They've clearly got a bit of money about them. The owners have a bit of money. They clearly want that sort of football being played. That becomes more of a difficult. Looking at the fixture list, that becomes more of a difficult fixture, given what's just happened, than we give it credit for.
Let's talk about the fixture list then, Toby, because I know yesterday you posted in the group chat before a ball was even kicked that you were worried that some of our less reasonable fans might start getting on Roberto De Zerbi's back if we had a poor run in October. And Pete's already kind of he's given us the fixtures, and we play some big games. We've got Spurs next. We've just played Liverpool. We play Chelsea. We play Man City. there are some games in there that are going to be tough to get anything out of. How many points do you think it's going to take on the board for fans not to overreact?
The thing is, though, and this is why I sort of reacted to Pete saying that we're going to beat Tottenham, is that really the expectation of Brighton Hove Albion? And if we do expect something like that, and we do spread that propaganda, are then fans going to start thinking that it's a bad result if we lose one goal to Tottenham, which I think is a really dangerous precedent to set, because Tottenham are a fantastic side. I think this is going to be their best season in a long, long time. I think that the red card yesterday was a terrible challenge against Arsenal. And I think that they probably could have won that game. They were sitting deep to sort of like bait Arsenal in a lot, and then really caught them out. And Arsenal looked shaky when they were catching them out. But the red card sealed the game for me and put the final nail in the coffin. With regards, obviously, I think I actually used the term, I think it was, some of our fickle fan base, which, I really need to get it out there. If you are going to get on De Zerbi's back for these next 4 games, even if you get 0 points, you really do need to have a sit down and look at yourself, because this is a testing period. I think that, 3 points in the next 4, and I would be chuffed to bits. And I would have been if it was Graham Potter as well. Do you know what I mean? We need to be really realistic, and even more so now that Potter's gone. But what I wouldn't be happy with is if we go into these games with a negative attitude, which I think against Liverpool we didn't. So it's already a positive sign. If we go in with a negative attitude, looking to sit behind the ball, behind 10 men behind the ball, that's when I'd be upset. But no, I think, as long as we stick to our morals, play to our players' strengths, I wouldn't mind losing the next 4. Honestly,
I think I'm not one of our fickle fans. We're going to lose games, and this little mini Indian summer that we've got going on at the moment, it is going to end at some point. We know it's going to, and I'm pragmatic and realistic enough to understand that. But as I say, and I'm not one of these people that's trying to sort of big us up and make us better than we are when I say we beat Spurs, but I genuinely think we do. I think I just feel that the side we've got at the moment, we can nick that game. It's not an unachievable game. Brentford we beat convincingly. I think we're a better side than Brentford by a long way. Brentford were carried a long way by Ericsson last season. Forest, whatever combination of players they put out on the day, I think we beat them. You've got no idea at their first 11. Man City, yeah, you go with that with no expectation. If you get anything from it, great.
I expect Lewis Carl Dunk to pocket Erling Haaland. He might have scored against minnows like Man United, but he ain't come up against Lewis Dunk yet, has he?
I mean, he's just scored a hat trick this afternoon. It's
just
the guy's mental.
Yeah. Oh mate, I am being facetious. If we can contain Haaland, that will be insane.
Yeah,
we probably won't.
But we've got Man City, then we've got the grudge match on the 29th against the ex-manager. I don't know if we get anything from those two. I wouldn't be expectant. But I think that to say if we don't win any of the next 4 games, then we're not in trouble. I don't agree we're in trouble necessarily, but I can see 6-7 points out of those 4 games. I think the Forest and the Brentford games are easily achievable. I still think we get something from Spurs, and then we go into the hard that little run of hard games with sort of the Man City, Chelsea, and then the Arsenal League Cup game. I think we go into them positive.
Yeah, you have to go in positive. We're still in this new manager bounce. I mean, I did want to talk about De Zerbi's little celebration for our 3rd goal yesterday was just lovely. And for me, that he has already endeared me to him as a manager so quickly. So I think it would take something monumental to happen in October for me to be like, well, actually, you know what? I don't know if this is the guy for us. But he's, from what I've seen, from what I've heard, I like him already. I've just really, really warmed to him. He just seemed so passionate and so happy yesterday when we scored the third goal. He seemed so calm when we were 2-0 up. And I like it. He was showing passion and he was showing that he was there for it. He came out at the end of the game and he said about how proud he was of his players and the team. He said about how his thoughts are still in the Ukraine. And me, I'm sold. I'm full on with this De Zerbi ball. You know, we played so well yesterday. I'm going to ask each of you now the same question. You don't have to justify it if you don't want to. The question is, yesterday finishes 3-3. So, Toby, 2 points dropped or 1 point gained?
2 points dropped.
Dan, same question.
As we were winning at 1.2-0, has to be 2 points dropped.
And finally, Pete.
I'll take it as a point gained. You know, if you'd asked me at 10-3 yesterday afternoon what the score was going to be, I wouldn't have expected a win. So I'll take a point gained. You take a point from Anfield, you've got to be happy with that.
You certainly do. And for what it's worth, I don't know. I'm totally agree with what you're saying, Pete. You know, a point from Anfield, but being 2-0 up could have been 3, could have been 4, and not to come away with a win was it's mad. Here I am, fan of little old Brighton, teams like Brighton, and I am disappointed that we didn't beat Liverpool by 4 goals to something. How ridiculous is this? I would never have thought this when we were playing at the Within. I would have never have. If you had told me this when we were playing under Sami Hyypiä, I'm going to pick on Sammy here. Yeah, that we would go to Anfield and we would make Liverpool look basic for 30 minutes and we could have been 4-0 up. I would have laughed at you. I would have.
I'm not unhappy with the point. I'm not.
No.
But as we say, we could have been more goals up, and we were 2 goals up. And I think it just came down to defensive errors on the day. Because on another day, we see that out easily.
Yeah, I agree, Toby. I think disappointed to not win, but not unhappy with a point is probably how I would phrase it. Because as you've pointed out, Pete, we also came back from being 3-2 down, and I think that showed a lot of character.
Yeah,
because to lose a 2-goal lead and then be 3-2 down, must be so deflating, so sort of like such a punch in the gut to not to throw it away, but to sacrifice that lead, but then to still have enough in you to come back and draw the game 3-3. I was very impressed with that sort of heart and commitment.
It's games like yesterday that make me feel that there's no one to be afraid of in the Premier League. We can get a result. Like I say, Man City I think they're different gravy. I really do. But there's no one to be afraid of. We can go places. We can go to the likes of Anfield, which is a fortress. They don't lose often up at Anfield. We've been to Old Trafford. We've beaten them at Old Trafford. Beaten Man United at Old Trafford. We've been to Stamford Bridge. We've beaten Chelsea there. We've been to Spurs' ground and we've beaten them there. You know, none of the certainly Arsenal. We've had a bit of a jinx over them in recent years, especially the Emirates. We can go anywhere and put a performance on, and I'm not afraid of any of those sides. On the day we can do something. So it's games like that give me the confidence that we're a good side. We're not a team to be taken lightly. We're not a team like Brighton anymore.
No, we're certainly not. We sit fourth in the Premier League on merit, and I think that's really, really important. And I think you list all those teams there, Pete, and it makes me think of our first season in the Premier League. And in the first season in the Premier League, I wasn't scared. I think that's the wrong word to use, but there was a certain anxiety of coming up against those teams and thinking, oh God, we're going to play these teams in the Premier League, something we've never done before. But now, I know, as you say, City are probably a different gravy, but everyone else is beatable. Everyone else, if we put in a really good performance, we can beat anyone in this league. And I think that's why, after one game of Roberto De Zerbi, any sort of pessimism I had of, oh gosh, we're going to be potentially fighting in a relegation battle or anything like that, has not disappeared, but so it's definitely dissipated. I'm very much a case of, if we can keep playing this attacking style of football, if the players stay in form. There will be dips. There will be games we don't win. We can't avoid that. But I genuinely think we could still push for another top 10 finish. And I still think, even with a new manager, that has to be the aim.
Yeah,
has to be.
Great.
Well, listeners, thank you very much for joining us on this Liverpool analysis video. Don't forget to leave your thoughts below. What have you made of Roberto De Zerbi's first game in charge? What would you change against Tottenham? Would you start Mitoma? If you did, who would you drop? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you very much to Toby, Dan, and Pete for joining me today on this episode. Wherever you are, whenever you are. Have a great day, guys, and we'll see you next time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content if you have not already. And we'll see you soon.